Hi, everyone. Okay, you can hear me. Great. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alexandra Chevalier. I'm WaterAid's EU representative based in Brussels. Lunch is closing out, so we're actually still awaiting two speakers, Micah van Ginneken and Mohamed Diatta. So hopefully they will join us shortly. If anyone spots them or if anyone is here and has their number, go ahead, feel free to message them. The session this afternoon is focused. Bonjour, Monsieur Diatta. Bienvenue. Merci. Is focused on the EU water resilience strategy's international dimension. So yes, you had heard from Commissioner Jessica Roswell, the EU Commissioner on Environment, Water Resilience, and Circular Economy during her opening remarks for World Water Week about the importance water resilience has taken globally and in the EU. So myself, I've worked on water in the EU space for several years, currently at WaterAid, but before I was at WWF. And over the last years, I have indeed really seen the increase of water stress, water issues on the global agenda, but in the EU, very much so. So the community's been very pleased that the EU has put forth this water resilience strategy, the first actually developed at the EU level. As Commissioner Roswell delineated, it came out in June, a couple months ago, following some lengthy consultations, but obviously the strategy's finalization is really just the first step, and how can we move then towards implementation. So while the strategy is mainly domestic, there is an international dimension to it, and that's going to be what we're going to talk about today. Of course, there's no need to know any details about the strategy to participate in the discussion, and definitely you don't need to know anything about the intricacies of EU decision-making either to participate. Since the room is so large, although I don't want to bother anyone who is very comfortably seated, but for any newcomers, feel free, to move down. Yes, so that, we are closer to the stage. So to start us off and to discuss the objectives of the strategies and how it could come about in terms of next steps and implementation, we have an esteemed panel of speakers today made up of European and global partners and stakeholders. So we will start off with a 50-minute panel discussion with these guests, and then we'll have about 30 minutes Q&A with a short interactive exercise between the two that will pull up after the panel discussion. So to start us off, to support the framing of the discussion during today's session, I'm very pleased to have with us Monsieur Mohamed Diatta. Welcome, Micah. Rien de problème. Monsieur Mohamed Diatta with Senegal's Ministry of Hydraulics and Sanitation, who is also Senegal's Sherpa for the 2026 UN Water Conference. So to link a little bit the EU's objectives around the strategy, these ambitions, to the contributions, hopefully, towards the UN 2026 preparations. Monsieur Diatta.
Thank you very much, moderator. Discussion held during World Water Week with all of you have been deeply insightful. And I am honored to contribute to this important session of the EU strategy, EU resilience strategy on its global dimensions. As we get here, we are reminded on the shared global responsibility we hold to protect and manage water resources in a time of increasing uncertainty and pressure. Water resilience is not a regional issue. It is a global imperative. Intervolves with food, public health, sustainable development, climate adaptation, and peace. As Senegal Sherpas for the next UN Water Conference, 26th UN Water Conference, I bring warm greetings from our government and extend our appreciation to the EU and its member states for their leadership on and strong collaboration in advancing global water agenda. The EU water resilience strategy represents a decisive step forward in recognizing water as both a driver and a victim of climate crisis. It is very important to highlight that the EU has been an important leader in global water agenda, with a strong commitment at the 23 UN Water Conference co-hosted by Netherlands and Tajikistan. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Maike for her support, but also advice through this process that we are making. And the leadership of the Netherlands and Tajikistan are key on this process. But beyond strategies, what we need today are bridges and synergies. In this respect, allow me to highlight a historic development for Africa. The African Union Declaration of 26 as the Year of Water in Africa, coinciding with the co-organization by Senegal and United Arab Emirates of the next UN Water Conference. This moment will also mark the adoption of the new Africa Water Vision 26-27, led by AMCAO, which positions water as a catalyst for Agenda 2063. Is the main agenda of African Union. From poverty eradication and industrialization to climate resilience and regional integration. Today's session provides us with an opportunity not only to better understand the strategy, but also to reflect on how we can align efforts across stakeholders on the path to the 26th UN Water Conference. Colleagues, the alignment of Africa's vision with EU resilience strategy can offer a unique opportunity to build on common global pathway where Europeans and Africans' priorities converge in resilience, innovation, efficiency, and solidarity. This means strengthening cooperation on investment, scaling up nature-based solutions, embracing digital water intelligence, and ensuring that women, youth, and vulnerable communities are the center of water action. In Africa, water resilience is not an abstract goal. It is a lived urgency. But building bridges between our experiences, innovations, and policies, we can shape a more secure, equitable water future for all. Let us ensure that the road from Stockholm to Dakar in January 26, you are all invited from 26 to 27 of January for the high-level preparatory meeting in Senegal, and onwards to UAE in December 26 is one of convergence, solidarity, and transformative actions. Congratulations to EU for the inspiring water resilience strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. Thank you very much for these words. just to share that you will be stepping out halfway through the panel discussion as well. So thank you very much for getting us started and setting the foundation so well for the discussion today. I'm very happy to give the floor now to Janne Leskinen from the European Commission's Directorate General for Environment, Water Resilience and Circular Economy. So that's been the Directorate General that's led the development of the EU's water resilience strategy. So Janne, to continue our discussion, could you, or in a way to also start it off, could you share with us the broad objectives of the strategy, especially the global elements, and perhaps how these may link up to how the EU hopes to contribute to the UN Water Conference next year?
Thank you so much, Alexandra, with pleasure. And before I start, I would like to thank WaterAid for the invitation to this very esteemed and important event. And also thank you for Senegal for a great process heading towards 2026. Senegal and United Arab Emirates have done excellent work for the heading to the 2026 UN Water Conference. And of course, Mr. Diatta congratulated us from coming to the water resilience strategy, but I would like to start by saying that this is just the start of a long way. This is sort of a starting point, and the water resilience strategy, that's the European Union's flagship heading to the 2026 UN Water Conference. And before I introduce the main focus of the international action in water resilience strategy, we have of course heard a lot during this Stockholm World Water Week about the European water resilience strategy. But today we really try to focus to this international element and to the 11 key actions that we have in the strategy. But maybe, since it's a Stockholm crowd and very well-informed crowd, in Finnish we have saying that repetition is the mother of learning, and probably we have to go through the reasons why we have come to the international actions to this water resilience strategy. We all know the global water stress and the grim visions of the future, what we have coming if we do not turn these trends. I mean, currently we know that 2.2 billion people still lack access to safe drinking water, and more than half of the population doesn't have access to the safe sanitation. This is exactly something that, this is a common problem, like Mr. Diatta was saying, that these are really global problems, and organizations like WaterAid really are working hard to tackle these massive, enormous challenges. But as we have heard many times during this week, and this is the World Water Week where we are really looking at the water climate nexus, Europe is the fastest warming climate. And of course, European Union Water Resilience Strategy is an EU policy paper, and its main focus is within the EU action. But whatever EU is doing with water resilience internally, we also reflect these and mirror these actions externally. So I would like to highlight that indeed this is the flagship initiative heading to the 2026 Water Conference. So, of course, European Union is not alone with these questions. We are building on the global consensus that our current model of managing water is not sustainable. And we are determined to make this UN 2026 Water Conference a milestone that drives progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And as you can see, European Union takes this very seriously. Water resilience is at the top of the European political agenda, as convoyed by the European Council, European Parliament. Also, we have a colleague in the panel from the European Economic and Social Committee who will speak more about this. And also we have the 2024 to 2029 political guidelines by the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. So these all helps parts of the EU to improve the management of our own water bodies, to tackle scarcity, and enhance the competitive, innovative edge that we have in water industry, whilst we embrace a clean and circular approach, both within Europe and externally. So the European Water Resilience Strategy sets out a pathway not to make just Europe water resilient, but also the world water resilient. And this is pretty much, the strategy has three main objectives. And this is very much rooted in the 2050 vision, which was put forward by the EU at the 2023 UN Water Conference. And we have also a Dutch representative here who will probably talk more about that, so I'm not going to go much into depth. But really, in order to achieve water resilience, we need to do three things. We need to restore and protect the water cycle. We need to build water-smart economies, and we need to secure clean and affordable water and sanitation for all at all times. Water and sanitation are human rights, and this is something that we really need to work hard with. I mean, we in the EU, we're committed to swift and transformative global action to avoid this accelerated water crisis that's looming on top of us. And this is, of course, very much related to the triple planetary crisis that is happening in parallel. And indeed, like I said in my introduction, the water resilience strategy lists 11 international actions for the global water resilience. And of course, our tools to achieve this includes, for example, actions under the global gateway strategy, which means that we will expand our strategic partnerships and water diplomacy to promote, for example, integrated water resource management. We need to implement source-to-sea approach, and like Mr. Diatta was referring, we really need to focus on nature-based solutions. We need to also invest in sustainable water and sanitation for all and innovation-driven policy reforms. Of course, one thing that EU really puts up and what we want to do and what we want to achieve is really this water-smart, circular and competitive economic way of using water. And I will later maybe reflect this more in our answers. But indeed, we are working very hard to promote transboundary water cooperation, support access of up to 70 million individuals to water, sanitation and hygiene. And most importantly, probably Special Envoy for Water will talk more about supporting the global water governance. But this is a clear commitment from the European Union. We really want to make sure that we have a better, improved, more action-oriented global water governance. I mean, European Union really is happy that the 2023 UN Water Conference placed water firmly in the global political landscape with the ambitious water action agenda. And this action agenda we need to turn to tangible and ambitious actions and to ensure that the conference in 26 and the discussions are carried forward. Notably, we need to make sure that the water action agenda, a set of 800 voluntary commitments made by member states and stakeholders, is implemented, as the EU will implement its own 33 commitments. I think my commissioner and my director said really well earlier in the week that the EU does not take water for granted, and therefore we are ready to work towards an ambitious and action-oriented outcome of the upcoming UN Water Conference, and in cooperation with the relevant stakeholders, as water is a global issue, but also a youth issue. Water is indeed, and it needs to be inclusive. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jana. So to complement Jana's intervention, we're very pleased to have Maaike van Ginneken, who is the Special Water Envoy for the Kingdom of the Netherlands. So Maaike, the Netherlands historically has taken a very important role within Europe and globally to promote water on the political agenda. So could you share with us a little bit what reflections you have around the strategy following Jana's intervention, and how you see the EU working together as a bloc with different member states to achieve these mutual objectives together?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Jana said that repetition was the basis for eternal learning. The version I know is that repetition is the basis of indoctrination, but that might be a different upbringing, but that's besides the point. As the government of the Netherlands, we're very happy with the EU water resilience strategy, and we're also very proud that it's very much informed by the Global Commission on the Economics of Water that we convened. The priority to protect and restore the water cycle is very much out of that analytical work, and that's why we sponsor this kind of analytical work, so that's very nice. We work a lot with the EU in the international arena, and maybe if you're not part of the EU and that kind of governmental system, you need to realize that the EU actually negotiates as a bloc, informal international negotiations. So if we go to the climate COP, it's not that the Netherlands sits there and Germany sits there, no, the EU sits there, and there's a whole circus behind, because of course we first need with whatever 20, how many member countries do we have? 27. We first need to have consensus of what's being said there. So I think that's the background you need to know, and I think the second background you need to know is in the European Commission, think of it as a cabinet with ministers for different things. Janne is not, but works for the Minister of Water, the DG Environment. And a lot of the international development is done with DG INPA, and we have DG Klima. Some people know that, but I think it's good for this discussion to just say that. Dutch people are true Europeans, and I see in the international arena together we're stronger. As a bloc, as an EU, to have one voice is really important if we want to get something done in the world. And it's becoming even more important in changing geopolitics. And we're very happy with how DG Environment and other parts of the European Commission actually fulfills this role, because it's not easy to keep 27 frogs together and then to have one voice and still make it meaningful and insightful. So thanks for that. If you look at the EU water resilience strategy, of course, the vast majority is just what we call national policy, intra-EU. And as the Netherlands, we think we fulfill most of the things that are said there, and we're happy with that. You can read the formal cabinet reaction of the government of the Netherlands on our parliamentary site. We sent it to Parliament last week. I think one part that we don't have to dwell upon, but I think is important to realize, is that there's a part of the strategy that's about what we call industrial policy. You see countries around the world being more engaged in making sure that their own private sector can serve themselves, that we still have technology firms in the Netherlands or in Germany or within the EU that actually can do our digitalization of our water supply, and that has to do with peace and security and stability, because we really want some strategic autonomy of our vital processes so that we actually don't have somebody else manage them through cybercrime. And we also, as part of that industrial policy, and you see that everywhere, if you read the newspaper, it's everywhere, but it is in the water sector, it is in countries, and it is within the EU, that we also want our water companies to be competitive around the world, because they create jobs and knowledge at home. And in the Netherlands, it's very important, because our private sector in the water sector does about half of their work outside and half of their work in the Netherlands. So by doing stuff outside, we actually get better water management in the Netherlands. Coming to the point of the 2026 water conference, or as Diata said, it's kind of water conferences. There's one in Senegal and one in the Emirates. What we want to see, first of all, continuity. We're proud of what was achieved in 2023. I think the focus on action and the water action agenda is important, but also continuity going forward. The idea that we now, and we spend a lot of time on the processes and convincing everybody that we want another conference, etc. So in some way having a regular intergovernmental process, so we don't spend all our time in just convincing people that this is important, but we can get to the substance is important. And I think that's what the EU position is. I also think that anchoring water in other multinational systems really important is, and that's also why I said the EU is also our representative in the climate COP or in the desertification COP. Some EU countries are in G20s, others are not. And I think also working through the EU water resilience strategy, and as one EU, we can better make those connections. The last thing I want to mention about the 2022 conferences is that in 2023 we had 3 principles: inclusive, cross-sectoral and action-oriented. We're happy that Senegal and the Emiratis have taken those over, but we need to do this in a meaningful way, no? These conferences in the UN are principally in between member states, no? That's how we've organized the UN, a club of countries. But there is other voices we need to hear, from youth, from indigenous people, from women, from men. And we need to be inclusive with all countries, that we don't, I mean, we go as an EU, but we hope that, you know, we're outnumbered by Africans and by Asians and by other bigger continents than ourselves. Also, that inclusivity is important. Action-oriented. These conferences are not a goal in itself. They're there to trigger action. We're very happy that the 2023 conference triggered action. The Water Action Agenda is in full swing. There is extra attention and action at the city level, the village level, the basin level, the country level, etc. And of course, cross-sectorally, because Stockholm is a nice kind of family gatherer of water people, but we need to invite people into our tent and we need to go out to the other tents. So the EU is very valuable for us. The EU water strategy, water resilience strategy on the global stage kind of reflects what's already happening, and we think that we can be stronger as Europeans together.
Thank you, Mijke. Yeah, thank you very much, Mijke, for complementing Jan's intervention so well. So having heard from the European Commission, the Netherlands, on how the EU plans to support global water resilience moving forward, and since we're also discussing here today what that implementation could look like, I wanted to give the floor to Michael Olufemi-Dada, who is the head of planning at the Lagos State Resilience Office in Nigeria. So before I give you the floor, Michael, I wanted to underline an element of the strategy that was also touched upon by Jana and Mijke, is strong European global leadership on water resilience is an opportunity to build alliances with international partners. So this is quite core to the elements that Jana and Mijke shared, talking about investment in infrastructure and how the EU can support water resilience also globally with its partners. So in your role, Michael, could you share a little bit with us on already what challenges you face in terms of integrating resilience, so water, climate resilience, into the planning of the city of Lagos, one of the most populated cities on the African continent. So obviously I can only imagine that would take days of workshops in terms of the challenges that encompasses, but maybe giving us some top lines and how a partner like the EU could support you, whether it's the city of Lagos, Nigeria, other partners at city level, as Mijke underlined, how these partners could support you in these challenges.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So good day, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for having me here before you today to talk about Lagos and how the EU can partner with Lagos in ensuring that we achieve a resilient water system in Lagos. So I'll start by giving you a context about Lagos. Lagos is a coastal city with a population of about 30 million. It has a land area of 3,577 square kilometers, and has 40% of the land mass area covered by water. So, and for Lagos, water is a very vital resource, as a natural and renewable resource, critical to life and economic activity. And for Lagos, water, is very, very important, in areas of, for domestic use, transportation, healthcare, education. So it has a variety of use for us in Lagos. Lagos currently has a water demand, potable water demand of about 700 million gallons per day, and it has an installed capacity of a little over 200 million gallons per day, functional at about 20%. So there is a huge gap, to cover. And those gaps are around inadequate infrastructure. We have increasing population, so there is increasing demand for water. The metropolis is growing fast and expanding, so definitely the water infrastructure needs to expand. Also, the infrastructures that we have are overstretched already. So there is a huge gap to be filled, and there is opportunity for partnership. Opportunity for partnerships around technology and innovation. How can we ensure that water gets from source to table in real times? Real practical project is what we are looking forward to. We are looking forward to incorporating technology and innovation in our water system. How can we have smart meters incorporated into the into the water systems, and tracking devices to ensure that we arrest water thefts and the likes? So we already have partnerships with the EU around water transportation, in ensuring that we reduce traffic on roads, incorporating water transportation. We already have an established relationship in a project called the Omieko Water Transportation Project. So we've extended partnership with EU that can be leveraged into potable water financing. Also, Lagos is having, we have climate-related challenges in water, flooding because of the average elevation level of just above 2 meters. So we have challenges around flooding, coastal erosion, coastal flooding, and the likes. So we also have opportunities around wastewater management that can be leveraged. So we are looking at water and wastewater. How can we ensure that cycle is bridged in a way that we, the inlet, which is the potable water, and the outlet, which is the wastewater, can be managed in a more renewable and very resourceful manner. So we have existing opportunities, and currently with our system, we've identified that we need about $1 billion, to meet up with the need for potable water in Lagos, and that, has been looked into, to take care of water, to take care of the current need, and in a way ensure sustainability of whatever is put in place. So as far as we are ready, we are open to partnerships. People are ready to pay. Currently, the system is not adequate enough, but people are sourcing water on their own. How do we ensure that micro units, in homes, people sinking their own boreholes to source their water, can be addressed, so that we have a common and a unified water management system in Lagos? On this note, I'd like to tell you that we are open to collaborations in Lagos. It's an opportunity for a huge investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. And that was, I think, a really important perspective as well, since a lot of the strategy is still quite high-level focused, because it's indeed, the first step before moving beyond implementation. And the example of your challenges in Lagos and what type of investments are needed, that will only be increasingly needed, I think really also helps put a lot of that vision into more concrete synergies. And also very interesting, the element on digitalization, technologies. So I think it resonates a lot with also Micah's intervention and Jana's. So thank you. So to stay with our European partners, we move back to the European Economic and Social Committee. We have Milena Angelova, who is a member of the ESC. The ESC is an EU advisory body. Maybe you can share a sentence on Milena as well. And thank you, actually, Micah, also for really underlining the element on how the bloc moves together on international agreements, because I think that was really useful as well. And you've been the rapporteur on several reports developed by the ESC on global water and water stress. So would you be able to share with us some of the key findings of these reports and how these have informed some recommendations that then you've shared with the EU institutions in the development of the strategy, and also how you envision those contributions going to the UN conference? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, and congratulations to you and WaterAid for making this panel possible and for putting together these fantastic panelists and making the room so crowded even in the afternoon of today. So first of all, I would like to share with you that the European Economic and Social Committee, in its capacity of advisory body to the European Union and representing civil society, felt the pressing need to do something about the pressing problems with water stress, and that's why since the last 3 years we produced about 15 opinions related to water, and my colleagues are here in the room together with me. We've been working a lot to that. And finally, last December, we were able to adopt a declaration summarizing our thoughts in 15 particular principles and 21 actions, also moving forward water resilience strategy. And we are very happy that the European Commission followed our suggestions by appointing a special commissioner for water and by putting forward the water resilience strategy. Really, now it's time to join efforts and to deliver swiftly on this strategy, because the actions are taking time to produce results. So let me say that two main elements that we are seeing as pressing in delivering on European water resilience is that the European Union should treat water resilience with the same ambition as treating the decarbonization, because water is broader than a pure environmental and climate issue. And I would like to remind that it's impossible to achieve sustainable goals without delivering on water goals. The second thing we would like to stress is the need to increase water resilience in all areas of society, and that water justice must be a priority on the same level as the climate justice. So we would like to focus urgently to safeguard a sufficient quantity of fresh water for society and citizens all over the globe. What the EC done and what we contributed together with my colleagues sitting in the room was to produce last year a special opinion on water empowerment of women, young people and indigenous and local communities, and I'm very happy to see here so many representatives from the First Nations in the room. Thank you for sharing also your wisdom, and also representatives from the young youth organizations. So we feel that these groups should really have a central role when it comes to water empowerment, and that special lighthouse partnership programs should be devised for them, including worldwide in the framework of global Europe. When it comes to women, we can say that proper wash services are fundamental for water empowerment, considering that in most heavily stressed areas, women and young girls are bearing the most of the burden of finding water at the expense of their education, employment, private life, etc. Being responsible for 72% of daily household water supplies, women around the world spend a total of 200 million of hours fetching water. And most exposed to this are the young girls under 15 years old that are twice likely to be responsible for collecting water and not being able to attend the school. Scientific evidence shows that in case wash services are improved, this will allow women to take greater control of their life at personal and household and community level, and this will uplift communities to contribute to higher GDP. The young people also are very important to be part of water-related decisions. They have the potential to challenge existing structures and procedures and bring new ideas. They are willing to network across and to provide their solutions, and they have to be supported and given places to make their voices heard. So I'm very happy that World Water Week always devotes special attention to young people. The empowerment of First Nations, the indigenous people and local communities is very important because they possess the wisdom, knowledge, the experience, and they have sacred relation with water, with land, with air, with elements. So we must cherish this wisdom and we must really grasp it when we provide decisions. Nothing should happen without you, and that's why we advocate that the indigenous people and local communities are part of each and every decisions, and their voices are taken in meaningful consultations. Then another element that is very worrisome for us is the fact that by 2050, a combination of water and climate-related problems and conflicts is forecasted to force 1.2 billion of people to migrate, mainly from the global south to the global north. Therefore, we ask swift actions to be taken, because otherwise it will be really a big shock for Europe. So it's a lot to do with preparedness and something to do with water stress. Therefore, we call to the European Union to promote and streamline also blue diplomacy in its foreign policy and external relations, including neighborhood, trade and development policies, because we see water as an instrument of peace and stability, and we don't want to see water as a weapon. Tackling water scarcity in the global south requires a multidimensional, collaborative approach involving local communities, governments, international organizations and private sector. In absence of effective solutions and swift actions, exponentially growing number of people will be forced to leave their homes in quest of survival, and this phenomenon is known as climate-induced migration, something that currently lacks a legal definition and also is lacking data. So this phenomenon cannot be traced, cannot be understood, and cannot be managed properly. Therefore, we ask efforts to be put at least to collect proper data and to see how the legal definition can be done. So also we would like to pay attention to understand the impact of slow onset events on migratory decisions, like deforestations, desertification, soil degradation, sea level rise, etc., in order to be able to predict this. Last but not least, I would like to say something about how we see the implementation of water resilience strategy. We want this to be done as soon as possible. We believe that the principle of leaving no one behind should be reiterated. We would like to see devoted financial resources in the multi-annual financial framework, including a devoted blue transition fund. And we believe that the 2026 UN Water Conference is a very good opportunity for blue diplomacy and for joining forces at global level. I would like to conclude by saying that the ESC is staying as a reliable and trustworthy and active partner, and we are ready to deliver to every solution in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Milena. Thank you very much, Milena. Little Brussels/EU translation. The multi-annual financial framework that Milena mentioned is the EU long-term budget. So it's really a call for putting financing and budgetary funds behind the vision of the strategy. So it covers a 7-year period, so it's very, very important, obviously, to get the financing right behind the objectives, and it's something that EU member states are negotiating right now, and it will cover the period 2028 to 2034. That's the little Wikipedia. But I thought it was very important to also underline the point, since this week's theme is also water for climate, about the linkage, or rather the analogy that what carbon is for mitigation, it's really the case that water is the same for adaptation, and so that indeed the same level of ambition should be put behind both processes. Last but not least, for our final panelists, before we start our little survey and the Q&A, I'm happy to give the floor to Lisa Opperman. So Lisa is the Vice President of the European Youth Parliament for Water. And so Lisa, in your role as a water youth leader, but also connecting with other youth leaders globally, could you tell us a bit more what that community's hopes are for the implementation of the strategy, and also what you hope that you will bring to the table in terms of youth engagement and ambitions to the UN Water Conference next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for inviting me to join this panel. I'm very excited to hear so much positive sentiment regarding youth involvement going forward in the strategy in the UN 26 conference. So that was very, very encouraging to hear today. First of all, the European Youth Parliament for Water is a youth-led network that tries to connect and mobilize youth across Europe. And we believe that young people are a significant and dynamic part of our society. And alone in Europe, approximately 15% of the population is between the age of 15 and 29, which is a not insignificant number of people. It's around 70 million individuals, and as youth definition is always a bit different, I think we can add a couple more people to that definition. So it's a quite powerful demographic, full of energy, of new ideas, and if some of you have been to the Stockholm Junior Water Prize celebrations yesterday, I think you've seen some of the brilliant ideas that my generation and even younger generation is coming up with. And in a recent survey from 2024, I read that around 75% of the EU population calls for more EU measures to address water-related issues. So we welcome very much this water resilience strategy and hope that it will drive these meaningful improvements that a large portion of the population is hoping for. So we hold high hopes for its effective implementation. And the strategy comes at a critical juncture. It rightly states that we can no longer take water for granted. We never should have done it, but now we realized we really, really can't take it for granted any longer. Water is neither unlimited nor invincible. It is increasingly threatened by pollution, by overconsumption, and a lot of other stressors that we've been discussing all week here. The very fact that we're talking about resilience at the heart of this discussion, of this strategy, is a reflection of the unsustainable path that we have been on for way longer than we should have been, and that we really need to move away from now. So we have to act with joint forces across generations, across national borders, and across sectors. And by empowering young people and including us in the process, we foster a sense of ownership, of responsibility, and long-term commitment to sustainable water management. I would like to highlight the particular importance of water access for women and youth, as has been already mentioned before. I'm very happy to have had the same thought of this. In many communities, women and young people are on the front lines of water management, whether it is the use of water, stewardship of water, and innovations. Ensuring equitable access to water is not only a question of justice, but also of unlocking the full potential of our society. So, meaningful participation of women and youth and all other marginalized groups can drive sustainable and inclusive solutions. Throughout the development of this strategy, the European Youth Parliament for Water has been actively engaged in drafting a joint position paper with, for example, the World Youth Parliament for Water, and also consulting with a working group of the EESC, the Consultative Commission on Industrial Change, on their upcoming opinion paper. And we are very pleased to see that some of our recommendations that we set out are actually reflected in the published strategy, such as strengthening cooperation with non-EU member states and a renewed focus on education and capacity building. We believe that these are some very, very important steps forward. In particular, peer-to-peer and transboundary cooperation is essential, especially for water bodies that are shared with non-EU member states. However, we emphasize the need to ensure that a decrease in water use within the EU is not achieved simply by outsourcing water-intensive or polluting activities elsewhere. True resilience means taking responsibility for the entire water footprint and not just what is happening within our borders. We welcome the planned launch of a European Water Academy to address capacity needs, the increased promotion of STEM subjects, and the focus on youth education and awareness through the European Blue Schools Network. However, we encourage that education and capacity building goes beyond STEM subjects, because as we've also talked a lot here, water touches all aspects of life, and we cannot solve all the water issues through a STEM perspective. We were a bit sad to see that the strategy does not include a dedicated section on youth involvement within its implementation. But one of our ideas we came up with to address this would be establishing mechanisms for youth consultation. For example, guaranteed youth engagement in the biannually planned Water Resilience Forum. We also very, very much value the recognition of rights of future generations in this strategy. And I want to share something that I've learned here last year at World Water Week when I joined a lot of youth and indigenous sessions. And it's the 7-generation approach that when you make a decision today, you look at the 3 generations that came before you to learn from what they have been doing, what has worked and what didn't work, unfortunately, and learn from that, and then look into the future and look at the generations that will come after you, not right after you, but further into the future as well, and to look at how will my decision today impact the world that they will have to live in, the resources that they will have available, and is that something I feel comfortable having cost, for example. So our decisions today cannot compromise the rights of future generations. So youth engagement is then also not just a matter of fairness, but of continuity, sorry. Because by involving young people now, we can provide them with the capacity, knowledge, and confidence to actively get involved moving forward. So as we look towards the UN 2026, our recommendations and our hopes are, quite simply put, to ensure that youth voices, needs, and concerns are not just heard, but embedded into the very fabric of water governance moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And there's still space in the implementation framework, for more integration of youth mechanisms into the implementation of the strategy. So as Jana and Micah said, it's only the first step. To then link into the Q&A, if Joachim, you're okay putting up the second slide. Thank you so much. So Jana walked us through some of the global actions that are part of the strategy. As mentioned many times today, and I don't think I've ever used the word strategy so many times in 50 minutes, this is really just the first step over the 5-year mandate of the Commission. And so, although not all inclusive, behind the survey, behind this QR code, are sort of the main global actions that are part of the strategy. So it would be to get your insight during the Q&A on which ones would you prioritize in terms of impact for the greatest number of people, communities, economies, all-encompassing. So yes, that way, it would be great to have you participate verbally during the Q&A, but you can also participate digitally. Thank you, Joachim, for managing that process. So I'd be very happy to open the floor for questions and answers for our panel. Does anybody have a question to start us off? Yes? Jean Lapeg, Action Against Hunger. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting panel. It's just a question about the capacity building, because, for example, we are running 2 masters. So it's master 2 degrees, one in Jordan and one in Africa, in Burkina Faso. And we have an essential problem, which is to secure scholarship for the students. I don't say the children, I say the students, because the average age is around 25 years old. The cost of a scholarship is 8,000 euro, which is very affordable when you live in Sweden, but which is nearly impossible to get when you live in Nigeria. And it's either too small or too big, but it's extremely difficult to secure this type of funds. So the question was put at the last African Water Week in Cairo last year, and it's still on the table. We don't know how to solve that, and many universities have got the same problem. So how can Europe support this very specific niche, which is very important also because we are localizing more and more the sector and we need to have good professionals? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean. And I think that was, yeah, very pertinent also compared to Lisa's intervention. I will open the floor to the panel with whoever may want to start. Jana, Lisa, Micah. Jana, go for it.
Well, if no one else will, I can. I think that's a very good question. Indeed, education is such an important question because it is really also a human right. And definitely, when we set an emphasis on education, we are really building the future. Of course, when we have, for example, the Global Gateway strategy and what European Union is planning to do, Global Gateway is based on 360-degree approach, where we have 6 founding principles. And one of them, and the most important one, is the democratic values and high standards. And to have democratic values and high standards in society, education is very important. I think that you are probably already doing cooperation with the local EU delegation. This is where the funds are being administered and where the heart of cooperation lies. But European Union has a very good network and does a lot of cooperation in the education field. But indeed, this is a very important aspect of the Global Gateway. And of course, without education, it is impossible to receive the second principle of the Global Gateway, which is good governance and transparency. I don't know if one of my colleagues would like to answer as well to the question.
It's a question of money as well.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, yeah, since I think it's a good intervention. Of course, it is a question of money. So coming back to the Global Gateway and actions on water resilience under the Global Gateway, the whole Team Europe is planning to mobilize up to 300 billion euros of investments between 21 and 27. And this Team Europe, of course, consists of European Commission, European member states, European Investment Bank, and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So indeed, as you read from the Water Resilience Strategy and Global Gateway Strategy, Europe is very committed to answer to these problems.
Yeah, I was doubting whether to answer, but let me answer. ODA, overseas development policies, are changing across the world, and they're changing in similar directions in many countries. And I recognize the pattern that actually scholarships are suffering a lot. And my personal opinion is that that's not smart, because I think capacity building is important. And this is one of the things we should be using ODA. I'm a Dutch civil servant. I work within our democratic system. There are certain directions of international cooperation. That's a hard sell within governments at the moment. And I think keep asking, keep convincing, etc. But this is actually, I recognize the problem, and it's not the direction that many governments are going in. That doesn't mean that civil servants are not trying to advocate within the politics and the policies that are being developed. Let me stop there.
Just one word.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, please, Milena.
It's just one word, because it's very important to elevate the level of education and to spread the knowledge, including, for example, sometimes for wash and how dangerous it is to drink contaminated water, something that all Africa is struggling with. But as there are no enough funds and there are scarce funds, I think that digital platforms and digitalization is one answer to the question, because sometimes it's cheaper to provide for digital platforms for education. Of course, then you need access to those digital platforms for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Milena. Michael, would you maybe want to share the perspective of Lagos in terms of any any programs where there could be partnerships on knowledge sharing between European and African universities in the area of water management?
Yes. Well, definitely there are areas where partnership can come in place. There are opportunities for partnership, in capacity building, because when we have gaps in water to be filled, it's not just about bringing the technology; it's about bringing the knowledge to sustain the technology. So it's very critical. There is need for research labs, to understand. There is need for feasibility and pre-feasibility studies and the likes. So there must be capacity, to do that, and there must be capacity to manage it, and there must be a system on ground. It's not even just about Lagos. If Lagos should achieve it, other states in Nigeria should achieve it, and other countries in sub-Saharan Africa and Africa as a whole also should achieve it. So capacity building is very critical in water management and water governance.
Thank you. Lisa, final words?
Yes. I unfortunately don't have the solution to that, but I would like to add to the problem, unfortunately, because I think that's also a problem that's coming up more and more in Europe, unfortunately, as well, because especially in the water sector, I feel like there's quite a few scholarships, and then when we go after to when people finish their education, a lot of European workforce goes looking for jobs somewhere else, because then the water sector is not profitable enough or attractive enough. So I feel like this problem spans even more globally and longer than just the education part itself, unfortunately. So that's something that we all together should definitely try to work against.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. And to touch also upon what Micah shared in terms of, as a civil servant representative, myself, I'm here as moderator, but I'm also, of course, working for an NGO, WaterAid. And I will say that the EU decision-making process is overall quite inclusive and is always eager to hear from its citizens, CSOs, interest groups. And right now, the member states are developing their own positioning in relation to the strategy. So this is also the time for anyone out there who would have an interest to reach out to your national government, if it's an EU member state, and share what you think your government should bring through to the discussions with the 26 other EU member states. I hope it's okay I said that. Are there any other questions? Yes, monsieur.
Hello, my name is Inam. I'm from a forest community in Bangladesh, and I'm doing a PhD in the London School of Economics right now. And we are taught that pollution is colonialism. And I wanted to draw attention to what Ms. Lisa Opperman said about the global footprint of European development and supplies that come in. And I wanted to know in the strategy and in the planning going forward and the budgeting, is there a balance between this, like covering the global footprint and making sure that people in our countries also, survive and don't have to migrate, not just because of climate change, because of pollution? What's the balance looking like going forward?
Thank you very much. Yes, please, Milena, go ahead.
I can give it a try. I can tell you that data shows that Europe is responsible for 7% of the world's CO2 emissions. So alone, we cannot solve the problem, although we are very committed to. That means we need a global effort and climate diplomacy to deliver on the SDGs. Unfortunately, we see now a little bit withdrawal of big nations from this process, and that's why we have to be active, including the civil society, to really deliver on that.
Maybe I understand your question on the water footprint of European consumers. We have a footprint in our own country, but we eat food which is produced elsewhere. We use energy produced elsewhere. That's your question, no? It's not really addressed in the EU water resilience strategy, or it's not normally very addressed in our water policies at the national level. Because the responsibility or the the policy making is actually somewhere else. No, it's about trade policies. It's about, and that's I think it's really necessary, at least to make people aware that whatever they eat and they use has a huge water footprint. The awareness is not that high. I think that's getting better also thanks to many civil society groups who are doing this. But it's quite difficult. No, my position as a water envoy is I work for all the ministries. So I also work for the Ministry of Trade and the Ministry of Economic Affairs. And maybe the CO2 footprint is something that people are aware of, the water footprint not. So I think it's a new movement that we're starting. But we need to work with very different actors within the government and different actors within the European Commission that we don't normally work with. So we need to stick together on this, make sure those people also understand what we're doing. And that's not an excuse, because I also need to try harder.
Jana, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, maybe just a quick point that pollution, water pollution, is also a major issue in the EU, but also globally. And this is something that the water resilience strategy is talking about, the integrated water resource management. I think this is, we cannot keep on going like this, spoiling our water resources. I think this is something that we have to stop. But indeed, integrated water resource management is the key.
Does anybody else want to add anything? No. I mean, it sounds like a really good session for maybe next year's World Water Week. Are there any other questions? Yes, please. Whatever works.
Hi. Thank you for today, and I think it's so important that the EU is putting emphasis on this. You know, speaking from the private sector, we're also looking at what's happening around us and what inspiration we decide to take as organizations. A bit more of a practical question, because you set out a target in the EU water strategy to enhance your water efficiency by 10% by 2030. I have two connected questions related to the target. The first one is, what is the KPI? What are you measuring to measure water efficiency? And the second one is the hope that member states will set their own water efficiency targets, or international, I mean, countries outside of the EU? Is that the ripple effect that you wish that has?
Would you be able to introduce your institution quickly?
Yes, Alice from Arla Foods.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Very good question. So once you read through the strategy, indeed, we introduced this water efficiency first principle. Maybe I'll tackle first the domestic EU issue, and then I'll go to the international element. So indeed, we have this 10% water efficiency target. One of the things that we also discuss in the strategy is additional data, additional understanding where our water actually goes. And to answer the exact KPIs, which are key performance indicators, you have to resort to more technical level staff of the Commission. I can promise to come back to you with that. But indeed, this 10% water efficiency target is not legally binding, because Europe is quite, European member states have organized their water management in very varying ways. We also have quite a varying circumstances in Europe. Country of my own, Finland, Finland has roughly 200,000 lakes. I don't know how many lakes the Netherlands has, but definitely not 200,000. That I can
confirm.
Yes, yeah, that I can confirm. So within the EU 27, our circumstances are very different from one another. Also, the ways how we measure and how do we do these things vary. But what we are doing, the European Commission is starting structured dialogues with all the member states, and then we are looking at to improve this and how do we reach this guideline of 10%.
But Jana, do I understand well that it's on drinking water?
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is also one of the things. But like I said, the water resilience strategy is only the start of a long journey, and this is something that we're really working on. I mean, we were congratulated by publishing this, but this is merely the start.
Maybe just to illustrate a little bit how this works within the EU, no? And for Dutch speakers, if you Google Tweede Kamer waterbeheerbaarheidsstrategie, then you get the cabinet reaction of the Netherlands, because we've already sent it out, it's in the public domain. This has been very much a headline thing when the EU water resilience strategy came out, and in the Netherlands we found that we were punished a little bit by Brussels. Because we're already very water efficient on our drinking water now. We have one of the lowest per capita drinking water consumptions of the year. So we were like, why do we need to go down by 20%, by 10% while somebody else is double our water consumption? So that kind of, how do you define these KPIs? What is your baseline? And where do you get your biggest bang for the buck? Whether it's internationally, globally, or it's within the EU, it's difficult to make policies for 27 member countries. So on this one, we felt a little bit like, why don't you say everybody needs to do X liters per day per capita? Or, everybody needs to get to 100 liters per day per capita. How you define it is really, really important and has a different impact on different member states. A good example. It's what comes out of the tap, and where that comes from is different in different countries.
Thank you. I think that actually gave a very tiny window into EU policymaking in terms of adapting sort of the ambitions for the EU bloc to individual EU member states and varying levels of infrastructure and already results. Yes, thank you for that. Are there other questions? Yes, maybe the final two for today, and then we can walk through the survey results and have some concluding remarks.
Hi, my name is Erna, and I was reflecting a little bit on the strategy's third objective of securing clean and affordable water for all at all times. And I thought about the enabling conditions for this. And in a situation where we see that water is being weaponized, at the same time as we see a war on within the European borders, water is truly a very big question for our regional security. And at the same time as the rules-based world order is being challenged, how is this being reflected on in the implementation of the strategy? I just wanted to hear your thoughts on this.
You take it. Janne says this one.
I take it, yes, of course. Of course, we paid attention also to the water, to the war within the European boundaries, and we know exactly what happened with Kachovka and how it came to Black Sea, and I'm coming from Varna, so my city also was affected. And that's why we welcome the recent publication of the Black Sea Strategic Orientation, where the ESC will produce a separate opinion, and that's why we call in our previous opinion to use water as an instrument for peace and stability, and we are aware that there are currently more than 400 conflicts, open conflicts, around water, and that's why the pressing matter of European water resilience strategy. And just last word, while we are speaking about 100 liters per capita per day, yesterday we heard that a lot of people around the globe live on 1 liter per day. So how it is possible to combine the two? Thank you.
Thank you, Milena. Was your question more on the European region or globally as well, or both?
I guess that the question is mostly directed to how the strategy addresses this issue, because it is clearly a relevant issue for water resilience in Europe to have safe water for all.
Look, this is there's been many sessions here about water, peace and security. It's a huge area, right? Water can be a victim, a weapon, or a trigger of conflict. And of course there's tension there, no? The EU in its global gateway, many of the member states have many kind of ODA programs to help with this issue, but we're also not able to resolve this, no? So it's a really important question, but I don't think we have the time, because it's, the answer is probably a library full of books, and we're trying to do our best, but the best is not always good enough.
Jana, maybe you could share a couple elements of how then in Europe, even river basin management at regional level and yeah, that cooperation works to make sure that, as the young lady underlined, there's safe water for all Europeans, if I understood correctly what your question was.
I think I surpassed the topic a little bit with the, you know.
It's not just water for all Europeans, it's water for everyone, everywhere, at all times. Access to water is a human right. So maybe how do we tackle this? Of course, we have to, of course, build infrastructure and do all these things. And then, of course, we have to do the governance side. I mean, for example, we're working with the International Network of basin organizations. We're in a transboundary cooperation. We also need to have all of these fields that we tackle in the strategy working together. I mean, that's why it is the third objective of the strategy. We have people who have problems of accessing water in Europe, but like Mike was pointing, Milena was pointing out, we are discussing limiting our consumption to 100 liters, yet some people live less than a liter a day. And I think also what we heard from Sonia was really good facts about how this is a gendered issue, how women and girls are really facing the consequences of water scarcity much more than men. I think it's also an indigenous issue. So this is really a huge human rights issue. But that's why it is the third objective of the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. Yes,
okay.
Please go ahead.
This is half a comment, half a question. So my name is Laura. I have here two representatives of three of the India-EU water partnerships. So you have EU water partnerships in 4 of them, I believe. India, I think, is the oldest one. You have one with Cairo, with Egypt, with China, and with South Africa. Yeah. So the coming out of the of the EU water strategy, a resilience strategy, was a great news for us. Also in India, we were following up. We wanted to know what's in there. There is a lot of interest. There is a lot of interest around the world on how Europe manages its water, because we have been doing this for a long time. We messed up in many senses, so it is interesting to share experiences. So that is the good part. There is something we are not really very clear, and that is the global gateway. We hear this, it's always mentioned, global gateway, mobilizing, big amount of money. Can I have an example? How will it look like in practice? Will it be like EIB and a multilateral bank supporting projects to enhance resilience in different countries? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, that is a very good question. And indeed, when you go through the strategy, we are enhancing our strategic partnerships. Water resilience is a global topic. And additionally to these priority partnerships, we're working with many, many transboundary basin areas. And to provide a practical example, I think I should ask that from you, because you are actually working with the strategic partnership. And I must say that there is a lot of good practices to be learned, a lot of information and data to be created, and a lot of key performance indicators to be developed. I would argue that, for example, what the EEC lifted up in their speech is really the action and the key action. And it's really to enhance research and innovation, bring the understanding and the scientific cooperation and research into these partnerships, because through these kinds of actions we will receive the best possible results. I don't know, you want to maybe add something, Mike?
Yeah, it's interesting because I explained that Jana is working for the Ministry of Water of the EU, and your question is for the Ministry of INPA, no? The Ministry of International Cooperation. And the Global Gateway is an interesting thing because it's actually not a program, right? It's something that's not so developed. I think it's, if you go to a country, you see that, you know, I lived overseas a lot, and you see that very often, you know, in a particular country, it might be 8 to 10 member states of the European Union working individually on well-meaning water projects that sometimes overlap, sometimes contradict. And we depend, and we should depend, on the government of the country to coordinate that. And the system is based on the government of the country saying, okay, we want this from Luxembourg and we want this from France, etc. But that doesn't always work because all these member states have their own opinions. No? So I think the global gateway in principle is an idea for donor harmonization and to say, okay, if we come together and we actually coordinate better on our side, it's easier for South Africa or Egypt or India or any other country to deal with us because the administrative burden is really high. Is that going perfectly? You know the answer. It's difficult because there's a reason why we're into this. But I think as the EU with the EIB, the EBRD, but also with the bilateral programs of the EU member states, it's a good intention and more than a good intention to harmonize more to make the administrative burden lower. And I think there is good examples where at least 2 or 3 member states actually come together and say, okay, now you talk to one person and he or she manages that program and you don't have to talk to 3 or 4 people. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are good examples. And for example, Denmark, Netherlands and Germany very often cooperate very nicely on issues of water. But I want you to understand when we said we will mobilize so many billions, so we are describing now the financial institutions of EU, EIB and ERB, and the bilateral, let's say, ODA. All together, this would be what we are mobilizing through Global Gateway. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is another session next time, because this is another very long discussion, but the mobilization, and I mean the most notable example is the discussions around the financial targets in the COP about this, where there's a lot of disagreement. What's the dollar mobilized is not only from these bilaterals and from the European institutions, but it's from private sector, it's from all sources. And the discussion on that, let's do a session on that next year.
Thank you.
And if I may add, Global Gateway indeed is an investment strategy. So this is, like Mike was saying, public-private partnership. But thank you for a very good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it links also to what Michael was proposing in terms of the type of partnerships that would be needed to work on capacity building, investment in infrastructure. So there's a lot of resonance between, between some of the objectives of the Global Gateway. Okay, thank you very much for your interactions. We just have a few minutes left. I thought that we could maybe share the survey results, if that's fine with you, Joachim. Thank you so much. Tack så mycket. Yes, so out of these 9 global actions, focusing on the 3 that came out the strongest, which really also sort of go along with the discussion today, just continuing strengthening the global water governance and the multilateral system. And very linked to that is also increasing the mainstreaming of water in international processes. So that's something to take forward, obviously at COP30 negotiations, and make sure that more and more integration of water is done, especially in the adaptation space. And finally, ensure that increased support to water access and sanitation, which is also something that was well underlined. Not at all saying the others are not important, they're crucial, but just in terms of time management. But we'd also be very happy to share these results then with the partners on the panel. As you know, again, this is just the first step towards implementation. Could maybe I get each one of you to share a final sentence or two, both on the discussion and or the results? Maybe I'll start with Lisa. Just a couple sentences on your main takeaways from the discussion, questions, results, anything you want.
Okay, thank you very much for this very interesting and fruitful discussion. I find it very nice to see that the things that I would also prioritize are very high on this list, the strengthening global water governance and mainstreaming water in international processes. As has been highlighted many, many times, water is in all these different aspects. Is when we talk about the water footprint, all different actors have to come together to work on it. So I found it very interesting, and I'm very excited and curious to see what the implementation then will look like going forward.
Thank you. Michael, please.
So, yes, it's quite interesting, a session. Yeah, for me, I think the results from the, resonate with my thoughts, really resonates with what Lagos needs to happen. Strengthening global water governance, mainstreaming water international processes. It's okay for me the way and the people, the people in the room are really thinking along the line of ensuring globally we need water governance, and there's no limit to it, there's no boundary to it. Yes. And the EU is doing well, extending what their thoughts beyond the boundaries of the European Union. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. My first take, it will be to uptake all the technological development in order to find workable solutions to the water-related problems. As Yanni very rightly pointed, this is our common research and innovation efforts and transfer of technologies that can help solving the problem. And my second message goes for the whole society, because unless we change our mentality to water smart society and uptake the water resilient behavior and water conscious behavior, we cannot solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a lively discussion and really good questions that we didn't have all the answer to, but that doesn't make them good, probably makes them even better questions. Two things. First of all, I spend a lot of time on number 1 and 2, strengthening global water partnership and mainstreaming water in international processes, but these are means to an end, right? Let's not make them ends in themselves. The means to an end of getting water security, climate resilience, and water safety for everybody around the globe at an affordable price. So I think that's something that we need to keep reminding ourselves of, because otherwise we get stuck in these processes. The second thing that I take away from this is that, especially in a changing world, we need to stick together as Europeans. 27 member states can do more than one. It also is easier for the rest of the world not to have to talk to 27 member states and you're like, which one is this one? So I think the EU is doing a great job and can continue to do a great job to bolster the combined efforts that we make both within the EU but also very much in the rest of the world.
Yes, I would like to also thank you all from excellent conversation and excellent questions. I also work a lot with these three. But indeed, I think this is really an urgent issue that we have to face together. And as we have already heard from the fantastic panelists and from the audience, it is really a wide issue to tackle. And when we talk about water resilience, we really have to talk about the infrastructure, the innovations, the research, and of course, the governance. But of course, when we build water infrastructure, it lasts for a very long time. We're trying to solve modern and future problems with infrastructure that's 100 years old. That's why I was also very pleased to hear that 40% of the junior prize candidates for this year in Stockholm World Water Week had an integrated AI solution in their proposal. So this was one of the things that we wanted to highlight in the strategy. Indeed, we really need to understand that we have to have innovative, smart approaches, not just to our economy, but also to the access of water resources for everyone. So once again, I would like to thank WaterAid for excellent organization of the event.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you hugely to the panelists. Thanks very much to all of you. I mean, we know how many terrific sessions there are at the same time. So really thank you for coming along, participating digitally, and through your questions. To close off, putting a little bit maybe my CSO hat on, and touching upon what Micah said in the closing remarks, that a lot of these processes and ambitions are a means to an end, and the end should be water security, water resilience, and that clearly also based on the questions and the interventions looks very different from one person to another, one country to another. And as the Commission really underlined that this is the first step in a process, you know, all of you are encouraged to keep participating in this process. So whether that may be, you know, as a partner country government at national level, municipal level, what do you want those partnerships to look like within, you know, the very different objectives that are part of this. So you are obviously just as much, it's a co-dialogue, co-development, and I share the same with also partners and stakeholders that are in the EU space to keep participating either within your national governments or directly in Brussels. Thank you again hugely for the discussion, and we're available for any questions afterwards. Thanks, have a good rest of World Water Week. Cheers.